Hi, I'm Sarah Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes family can be your worst enemy, especially in business. For 10 years, I poured my heart and soul into our family's small tech company, transforming it from a struggling startup into a $50 million enterprise. But sometimes success breeds jealousy even among those who should be celebrating your achievements. I still remember the day everything started, when our family business was nothing more than a small computer repair shop in a strip mall. Dad had started it 20 years ago, and it was his pride and joy, even though it barely made enough to support our family. My sister, Emma, was always his favorite, the one who got straight A's and went to an elite business school. I was the quiet one, the one who stayed behind to help Dad while pursuing my computer science degree at a local college. Sarah, you're wasting your potential here, Emma would say during her visits home from college. You should aim higher. But I saw something in our little shop that others didn't: potential. While Emma was studying theoretical business models, I was learning real world programming and spotting gaps in the market. During my final year of college, I developed our first proprietary software, a simple but effective tool for small businesses to manage their inventory. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was user friendly and affordable. Dad was skeptical at first, but when local businesses started buying licenses, his attitude changed. Maybe you're onto something here, kiddo, he said, finally showing a glimmer of pride in my work. Those words meant everything to me then. If only I had known they were as temporary as morning dew. The business grew steadily under my guidance. I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week. While Emma was climbing the corporate ladder at a prestigious consulting firm in New York, I was building something real. Our little repair shop transformed into a software development company, and our client base expanded from local businesses to national corporations. Mom watched it all with quiet concern. "Don't work too hard, Sarah," she'd say, bringing me dinner at the office. "You need a life outside of work too." But I was driven by a vision, and maybe, deep down, by a desire to prove myself to my family. 5 years into our transformation, we hit our first million in annual revenue. That's when Emma suddenly became interested in the family business again. She quit her job in New York and moved back home. "I think it's time I took my rightful place in the company," she announced at a family dinner. With my business expertise, we could really take things to the next level. Dad beamed at her words. "That's wonderful, princess. We could use your professional touch around here." I sat there, fork suspended midair, trying to process what was happening. The company I had built from nearly nothing was being handed to my sister on a silver platter. But I swallowed my objections and tried to be a team player. Emma was appointed as co-CEO alongside me, despite having no experience in our industry. Dad said it would be good for the company image to have someone with her credentials at the helm. I focused on product development and operations while she handled marketing and investor relations. The next 5 years were a study in contrast. While I continued developing new software solutions and maintaining client relationships, Emma focused on creating a glamorous image for herself as the face of the company. She gave interviews about being a woman in tech and accepted awards for entrepreneurship, all of taking credit for innovations my team and I had created. Our revenue continued to grow, reaching $50 million annually, but so did the tension between us. Emma began excluding me from key meetings, making decisions without consulting me, and slowly pushing me to the sidelines of my own creation. Then came Dad's 60th birthday party. The day everything changed. The party was Emma's idea, of course. She rented out the grand ballroom of the city's most expensive hotel and invited all our business associates. It was more of a networking event than a birthday celebration, but that was Emma's style. Everything had to serve a purpose. I arrived early to help with the preparations, wearing a simple black dress that Emma immediately criticized. "Couldn't you have made more of an effort?" she hissed. "These are important people coming tonight." I ignored her comment and focused on greeting guests as they arrived. The room filled quickly with business associates, clients, and family friends. Emma worked the room like a politician, while I stayed in the background, making sure everything ran smoothly. During dinner, Emma clanked her glass and stood up for a speech. I expected the usual, a touching tribute to Dad, maybe some memories from our childhood. Instead, she dropped a bomb that would shatter our family forever. As we celebrate Dad's 60th birthday, she began, her voice carrying across the silent room. "I think it's time to announce some changes at Chen Technologies. The board has agreed that the company needs unified leadership to move forward. My heart stopped. Board meetings? What board meetings? For too long, we've been held back by outdated thinking and resistance to change, Emma continued, her eyes fixing on me. That's why, effective immediately, I will be taking over as sole CEO. It's time for certain elements that are no longer serving our growth to step aside. The room erupted in murmurs. I sat there, frozen, as Emma continued her character assassination, disguised as a corporate announcement. Some people, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, are better suited to technical roles rather than leadership. My sister Sarah has been adequate in maintaining our legacy systems, but to compete in today's market, we need vision. We need excellence. And frankly, Sarah, you're just not cut out for this level of business. I looked at Dad, expecting, hoping, he would stand up for me. Instead, he was nodding along with Emma's words, a proud smile on his face. Mom stared at her plate, her hands trembling slightly. The truth is, Emma continued, her voice rising, you're worthless in today's business world, Sarah. Your old-fashioned ideas and lack of proper business education have become a liability. It's time for you to step aside gracefully. The silence in the room was deafening. Hundreds of eyes turned to me, waiting for my response. I could feel the pity, the schadenfreude, the judgment. Everything I had built, every sacrifice I had made, was being stripped away in front of everyone I knew. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Everyone expected a scene, perhaps tears, maybe a shouting match. Instead, I simply picked up my purse, walked to Dad's table, and placed a small wrapped package in front of him. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said quietly. Then I walked out of the ballroom, head held high, leaving behind the whispers and stares. That night, as I sat in my home office surrounded by awards and patents that bore my name, I made a decision. Emma thought she had won, but she had forgotten one crucial detail, something that would turn her moment of triumph into the biggest mistake of her life. As I powered up my laptop and began typing, a small smile played on my lips. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. After all, there's more than one way to run a successful business, and I had learned more in 10 years than Emma had learned in all her fancy business classes. The next morning would bring changes that none of them saw coming, changes that would make them realize exactly how worthless I really was. The next morning dawned bright and clear. I arrived at the office early before anyone else and waited. At precisely 9 a.m., Emma strutted through the front doors with Dad beside her, both wearing triumphant smiles that were about to be wiped from their faces. "Sarah?" Emma's voice held a mix of surprise and annoyance. "What are you doing here? I thought after last night, you'd have the dignity to stay home." I smiled, remembering the email I had sent at 3 a.m. to every major client, partner, and employee of Chen Technologies. "Just wrapping up some loose ends, sister dear. But since you're here, we should probably talk about the company's future." "There's nothing to discuss," Dad interjected, his voice firm. "Emma's in charge now. The board has already approved it." "Ah yes, the board," I said, pulling out my tablet. "Let's talk about that. You see, while Emma was busy planning parties and giving interviews, I was actually building this company. And there are a few things you both seem to have forgotten." I pulled up a document on the conference room's main screen. "First, let me remind you that I own 51% of Chen Technologies shares. When we incorporated 10 years ago, Dad gave Emma and me equal shares of 25% each, keeping 50% for himself. But 3 years ago, when we needed capital for expansion, Dad sold me 26% of the shares. Remember that day, Dad? You were too busy attending Emma's award ceremony to handle the negotiations yourself, so you signed the papers without reading them carefully." The color drained from both their faces. Emma's perfectly manicured hands gripped the conference table. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Dad would never." "Oh, but he did," I continued, pulling up more documents. "And that's not all. The core software that generates 80% of our revenue, it's not owned by Chen Technologies. It's owned by my separate company, Innovate Solutions LLC. Chen Technologies only has a licensing agreement which expires, I checked my watch, about 10 minutes ago." Dad collapsed into a chair, realization dawning on his face. "The renewal papers. The ones you asked me to sign last week. The ones you were too busy to read because you were helping Emma plan the party. Yes, those papers. I decided not to submit them. Emma's face contorted with rage. You underhanded little. Careful, sister, I cut her off. You might want to hear the rest before you finish that sentence. While you were busy announcing my supposedly graceful exit last night, I was sending emails to our clients. You see, most of our major clients have personal loyalty clauses in their contracts. They signed with Chen Technologies because of me, my expertise, and my track record. Last night, I informed them of the leadership changes and my departure. I pulled up my email, showing the dozens of responses that had already arrived. Would you like to know how many have already triggered their contract termination clauses? Or how many of our top developers, who, by the way, are actually employed by Innovate Solutions, have already accepted positions at my new venture? The room fell silent. Through the glass walls, we could see employees gathering, whispers spreading as they checked their emails. Emma's perfect composure cracked as she frantically checked her phone. You can't do this, she stammered. The company you tried to steal from me? I finished for her. The one you thought you could just take over because you have an MBA and Dad's approval. That company ceased to exist the moment you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone we know. I stood up, smoothing my dress. So here are your options. Option 1. I walk away with my shares, my software, my clients, and my employees. Chen Technologies becomes an empty shell, and you can explain to all those important people you invited last night why the company's value dropped to zero overnight. Dad's face had aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. And option 2, he asked weakly. Option 2, you both resign. I take full control of Chen Technologies. You keep your shares as silent partners, receiving dividends but having no say in operations. Emma gets a nice severance package and glowing references for her next job, somewhere far away from here. Emma's face had turned an interesting shade of red. You planned this all along, didn't you? You've just been waiting for the right moment to stab us in the back. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, Emma. I spent 10 years trying to be a good daughter and sister while you both took me for granted. I built this company from nothing while you collected accolades for my work. I only planned this. I checked my watch again, about 12 hours ago, after you called me worthless in front of everyone we know. My phone buzzed, another client termination notice. Time's running out. What's it going to be? The next hour was a blur of paperwork and lawyers. By noon, I sat alone in what was now my office, looking out over the city. The company I had built was now truly mine, but the victory felt hollow. Family relationships lay in ruins around me, trust shattered like dropped crystal. Mom came to see me that evening, her eyes red from crying. Did it have to end this way? She asked softly. They gave me no choice, I replied, my voice gentle but firm. They would have taken everything I built and discarded me without a second thought. She nodded slowly, understanding but sad. What happens now? I showed her the plans I had already drawn up, expansions, new product lines, innovations I had been holding back. Now I built something even bigger, but this time, I'd do it without having to carry people who see me as worthless. Over the next year, Chen Technologies, under my sole leadership, tripled in value. Emma found a job with a startup in Silicon Valley, humbled but hopefully wiser. Dad retired, finally understanding that his golden child had nearly destroyed his legacy. We see each other at holidays, maintaining a polite distance that masks the wounds that may never fully heal. Sometimes late at night, I look at old family photos and feel a twinge of sadness for what we lost. But then I remember that night at the birthday party, the look of disdain on Emma's face. The way Dad nodded along with her cruel words. In business and in family, respect is earned, not given. They learned that lesson too late. As for me, I learned that sometimes the quiet ones, the ones dismissed as worthless, are the ones you should watch out for, because we're the ones who know how to build something from nothing and how to take it all back when others try to steal it. My story spread through business circles, a cautionary tale about underestimating the wrong person. These days, when I attend industry events, I often catch whispers. That's Sarah Chen, the one who. They never finish the sentence, but they don't have to. My success speaks for itself. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at Emma's Business School's graduation ceremony. The topic? Hidden Strengths, the Power of Underestimated Leaders. I accepted the invitation with a small smile, already planning my speech. After all, I have quite a story to tell. The company continues to thrive under my leadership, but more importantly, I found peace with my decisions. Sometimes the strongest message you can send is simply proving people wrong. And sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about rising so high that they can't help but see their own mistakes. As I write this from my office overlooking the city, I'm reminded of something my mother once told me. Success is the best revenge, but wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start seeking growth. She was right. I've moved past the need for revenge now. These days, I focus on building something meaningful, something that will outlast all the petty jealousies and family dramas. I still keep that wrapped birthday present I never gave Dad. A photo album of the company's journey from that tiny repair shop to what it is today. Maybe someday, when the wounds have healed enough, I'll finally give it to him. Until then, it serves as a reminder that our greatest strengths often come from the very things others underestimate about us. I still remember that rainy Tuesday morning when my world fell apart. After 8 years of marriage, I came home from my night shift at the local diner to find the locks changed and my belongings in garbage bags on the front porch. My hands trembled as I called my husband David, only to hear his cold voice. "It's over, Sarah. I've moved on. Don't try to come back." I stood there, rain soaking through my waitress uniform, staring at the house we'd bought together. Well, the house I bought, technically, my inheritance from my beloved grandfather, had paid for the down payment, but David's name was on all the paperwork. I trusted him completely when he said it was easier that way with his credit score. What a fool I'd been. My phone buzzed again. A text notification from our joint bank account. Balance, $0. 8 years of savings gone. My separate account, also emptied. He'd had access to everything because I'd trusted him. Because I believed in our marriage. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning. With nowhere else to go, I loaded what I could into my old Honda Civic, the only thing still in my name, and drove to my mother-in-law Patricia's house. Maybe there had been some mistake. Maybe she could help me understand what was happening. I should have known better. Patricia opened her door wearing her signature pearl necklace and disapproving frown. Behind her, I could see David's sister Amanda smirking. "Well, well," Patricia said, looking down her nose at my wet, bedraggled appearance. "I suppose you're here to beg for money now that David's finally seen sense." "Patricia, please," my voice cracked. "I don't understand what's happening. Everything's gone. The house, our savings." "Oh, honey," she laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Did you really think someone like David would stay with a waitress forever? He's finally moving up in the world, and he needs someone more suitable." She adjusted her designer watch. "Though I must say, you lasted longer than I expected. Most gold diggers would have shown their true colors years ago." "Gold digger?" I whispered, stunned. "I paid for our house. I supported him through his MBA. With your grandfather's money," Amanda chimed in. "Which you've been lording over David for years. Well, now he's paid you back. Guess you'll have to find another rich old man to mooch off of." I stood there, rain mixing with my tears, as 8 years of memories rewrote themselves in my mind. All those family dinners where they'd subtly mocked my job. The way they'd dismissed my contribution to David's success. How they'd never accepted me, the poor girl from the wrong side of town who dared to marry into their precious family. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice stronger now. "Where's David?" "On his honeymoon," Patricia said with a cruel smile. "With Jessica. You remember her? His new executive assistant. They've been seeing each other for months. She comes from a good family, you know. She'll be much better at supporting David's career than you ever were." The world spun around me. Jessica. The woman he'd hired 6 months ago, who he'd insisted on working late with so often, who'd smiled sweetly at me at the company Christmas party while apparently sleeping with my husband. "You knew," I realized, looking between Patricia and Amanda. "You all knew he was cheating." "Of course we knew," Amanda rolled her eyes. "We helped him plan everything. Jessica's father is on the board of David's company. This marriage will do wonders for his career. Unlike you, who's been holding him back with your embarrassing little waitress job." "Now," Patricia said, reaching for her door, "I suggest you leave before I call the police. And don't bother trying to fight this in court. Our family lawyer has everything handled. You signed a prenup, remember? You'll get nothing." The door slammed in my face, leaving me alone in the rain once again. That night, I slept in my car in a Walmart parking lot, too shocked and broken to even cry. The next day, I tried to check into a cheap motel, only to find my credit cards canceled. My phone was next. Apparently, it had been on David's plan. Within 48 hours, I had nothing but my car, the clothes in my garbage bags, and $237 in cash. I managed to find a bed at the local women's shelter. The irony wasn't lost on me. I volunteered here for years, never imagining I'd end up staying here myself. The shelter director, Grace, remembered me from my volunteer days and gave me a private room usually reserved for emergency cases. "You're in shock, Sarah," she said gently, bringing me a cup of tea. "But you're stronger than you know, and when you're ready, we'll help you fight back." I didn't believe her then. How could I fight back? David had taken everything, planned it all perfectly. He had his family's money, their lawyers, their connections. I was just a waitress with a worthless degree in social work, trying to make ends meet while supporting my husband's dreams. But Grace was right about one thing. I was in shock, so much so that I almost missed the most important detail of all, a detail that would change everything. It happened 3 days into my stay at the shelter. I was helping in the shelter's kitchen. I couldn't afford to pay for my stay, but I could at least cook when I heard excited whispers from the front office. "The CEO of Montgomery Industries is here." "What's Alexander Montgomery doing at our shelter?" "I heard he's doing a series of surprise visits to local charities." I froze, nearly dropping the pot I was holding. Montgomery Industries, David's company, the place he'd worked his way up to middle management, always complaining that he deserved more recognition, faster promotions. I'd never met anyone from his work. He'd always said I wouldn't fit in at corporate events. But I knew about Alexander Montgomery. Everyone in town did. The brilliant young CEO who'd taken over his father's company 5 years ago and transformed it into a tech giant. The businessman who put our small city on the map. The man who, if the gossip was true, had no patience for dishonesty or corruption in his company. Before I could decide whether to hide in the kitchen, Grace came rushing in. "Sarah, Mr. Montgomery is asking to speak with all our residents. He's making a large donation and wants to hear their stories firsthand. Would you be comfortable joining the group?" I looked down at my shelter-provided clothes, touched my unwashed hair. I don't know, Grace. I'm not really presentable." "Nonsense," she said firmly. "You're one of us now, and your story deserves to be heard." So that's how I found myself sitting in a circle with 15 other shelter residents, facing Alexander Montgomery himself. He wasn't what I expected. Younger than I'd imagined, maybe in his mid-30s, wearing a simple button-down shirt and slacks. No fancy suit, no arrogant attitude. He listened intently to each woman's story, asking thoughtful questions, taking notes. Then it was my turn. "I'm Sarah," I said quietly. "I'm here because my husband emptied our accounts and changed the locks while I was at work. He works for your company, actually." Alexander Montgomery's head snapped up, his pen freezing mid-note. "What did you say?" I couldn't stop now. The whole story poured out. The 8 years of marriage, supporting David through his MBA, buying our house with my inheritance, discovering his affair with his executive assistant, his family's cruel dismissal. "He's David Chen." I finished, my voice barely a whisper. "In middle management, he just married Jessica Williams. Her father is on your board." The room was dead silent. Alexander Montgomery's face had gone completely still, his eyes intense. "David Chen," he repeated slowly. "The one who's been pushing for a senior director position, who's been claiming his wife is fully supportive of his career moves." I laughed bitterly. Supportive? I didn't even know he was divorcing me until I found my belongings in garbage bags. "Grace," Alexander said suddenly, standing up. "May I use your office for a moment? Mrs. Chen and I need to have a private conversation." "It's Ms. Miller now," I corrected quietly. "I'm going back to my maiden name." He nodded, a strange expression crossing his face. "Ms. Miller, then. Please, come with me." As I followed him to Grace's office, I had no idea that this conversation would change everything. That within 24 hours, David's perfectly planned new life would begin to crumble. And it would all start with 5 simple words from Alexander Montgomery. "I've been looking for you." I followed Alexander Montgomery into Grace's small office, my heart pounding. He closed the door and turned to face me, his expression intense. "5 years ago," he said, "did you write a business proposal for a corporate-sponsored chain of community resource centers?" My mouth fell open. How did you? It crossed my desk when I first became CEO, he continued. Brilliant concept, combining job training, childcare, and social services in economically disadvantaged areas. The financial projections were sound, the community impact analysis thorough. But when I tried to contact the author, Sarah Miller, she vanished. The email bounced back, the phone number was disconnected. I sank into a chair, memories flooding back. That was right after I married David. He said the proposal was too amateur, that it would embarrass him at work. He made me take it down from all the submission portals. Said I should focus on supporting his career instead. Alexander's jaw tightened. Do you know what happened to that proposal, Ms. Miller? Nothing, because your husband buried it. He accessed the company's submission system using his credentials and withdrew it without your knowledge. We found the digital trail during a system audit last year. We couldn't locate you. What? My voice shook. But why? Because David Chen has been taking credit for other people's work for years. We've suspected, but couldn't prove it. He's very careful. Very manipulative. Alexander sat on the edge of Grace's desk. The proposal's withdrawal caught our attention because it was exceptional. I've been looking for its author ever since. Tears filled my eyes. All those nights I'd worked on that proposal, dreaming of making a difference. All while David was apparently sabotaging me. There's more, Alexander said gently. 2 months ago, David presented a modified version of your proposal to the board. Claimed it was his original work, part of his bid for the senior director position. Jessica's father has been championing him for the role. A bitter laugh escaped me. So that's why he chose now to leave. He finally found a way to use my work for his advancement. Ms. Miller, Sarah. Alexander leaned forward. I'd like to offer you a job. As director of our new Community Impact Division. Your original proposal will be the foundation, but you'll have full resources to expand it. Starting salary is $250,000, plus benefits and stock options. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. But I'm just a waitress. No, he said firmly. You're a brilliant strategist who's been systematically undermined by an abusive husband. That ends today. He pulled out his phone. With your permission, I'd like to call our legal team. David Chen committed corporate fraud by stealing and misrepresenting your work. That's grounds for immediate termination. My head spun. But his new wife, her father. Board member or not, fraud is fraud. And something tells me Mr. Williams won't be so supportive once he learns the truth about his new son-in-law. Everything moved quickly after that. Alexander's legal team arrived within the hour. They took my statement, gathered evidence. By morning, the truth about David's fraud was exposed. He was fired publicly, his corporate accounts frozen. Jessica's father, horrified by the scandal, immediately annulled their marriage. I wasn't there when it happened, but Amanda later told me in a desperate attempt to reconcile once she realized I was now a company director, that David and Jessica returned early from their honeymoon to find their keycards deactivated and security waiting. How dare you? David had apparently shouted at Alexander in the lobby. Do you know who my new father-in-law is? Was, Alexander corrected calmly. The marriage has been annulled, and Mr. Williams sends his regards, along with a recommendation that you find employment far, far away from our industry. That's when David saw me standing beside Alexander in a designer suit, a gift from the company's stylist. His face went white. Sarah? What are you doing here? Taking back what's mine, I said calmly. The proposal you stole, it's being implemented. The career you tried to destroy, it's flourishing. The woman you discarded, she's your new boss's right hand. Patricia and Amanda tried damage control, of course. Suddenly they were calling constantly, leaving tearful voicemails about family loyalty. But I had a new family now, the incredible team at Montgomery Industries who welcomed my ideas and valued my contributions. The women's shelter where I'd stay became the pilot location for our first community resource center. Grace joined as program director. Within a year, we'd opened 10 more centers across the state. David, last I heard, he was working as a junior analyst in a small firm 3 states away. Jessica married a wealthy developer, and Patricia loves to complain about how her new daughter-in-law married down. As for me, well, that's another story. One that started with late nights working on center proposals with Alexander, strategy sessions that turned into dinner discussions, meetings that lingered long after the agenda was complete. "I'm not him," Alexander said one evening as we watched the sunset from his office. "I'll never try to dim your light." "I know," I replied, because I did know. I learned the difference between someone who wants to possess you and someone who wants to see you soar. 2 years after that rainy day when my world fell apart, I stood in the grand ballroom of the Montgomery Industries headquarters. Hundreds of employees and community members gathered to celebrate the opening of our 15th Resource Center. And now, the MC announced, "Please welcome our Community Impact Director and newest board member, Mrs. Sarah Montgomery." As I took the podium, my wedding ring catching the light, nothing flashy. Alexander knows I prefer elegant simplicity. I saw my old mother-in-law in the crowd. Patricia had wrangled an invitation through a business contact, no doubt hoping to reconcile now that I'd married up. But I wasn't the same woman she dismissed in the rain. Meeting her eyes, I smiled and began my speech. 5 years ago, I wrote a proposal about the power of community support, about how everyone deserves a chance to rebuild, to grow, to shine. Today, we're not just opening another center. We're making that vision reality. I paused, my hand resting on my slightly rounded belly, our first child still our secret for a few more weeks. Sometimes, life's greatest betrayals lead us exactly where we're meant to be. Sometimes, losing everything means making room for everything you've ever dreamed of. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living your truth so boldly that those who tried to break you become nothing but a footnote in your success story. Alexander squeezed my hand as the room erupted in applause. And in that moment, I sent a silent thank you to David. His cruelty had freed me. His betrayal had led me here. I'd lost a husband who dimmed my light, but I found a partner who helped me shine. I'd lost a fake family who valued status, but I built a real one based on love and respect. Most importantly, I found myself, the woman who'd always been there, waiting to emerge. Strong, capable, unstoppable. That night, as Alexander and I drove home to our modest house, we could afford bigger. "But I love this one's cozy garden," he asked. "Any regrets?" I touched my growing belly, thought of our expanding centers, our passionate team, our future together. "Just one," I smiled. "I should have checked the company submission portal years ago." He laughed, the sound warm in the quiet car. Everything happened exactly when it was supposed to. And you know what? He was right. Sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as its cruelest moments. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you never knew you were looking for. And sometimes a rainy Tuesday morning when your world falls apart becomes the first chapter of your greatest adventure.